There are stories that settle in your bones, stories that make you put down your phone and simply stare at the wall. This is one of them. It's Claire's story, but I was there for almost all of it, and I carry the weight of it still. I carry it because she can't, or won't, write it herself. I carry it because for 3 years, the truth of what happened, what her family did to her, and what she did in return, has lingered, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my life. And honestly, I don't regret a single thing that followed. I've known Claire since our mid-20s, a chance meeting through a mutual friend at some work event in Austin. She's a nurse, the kind of person who shows up for everyone else's problems with unwavering steadiness, all while quietly navigating her own. She isn't prone to drama, rarely complains. She's simply steady, not in a dull way, but in the way that matters most. When chaos descends, she doesn't spiral. She just gets to work. There's a sharpness to her, too, one that often sneaks up on you. She doesn't declare it, she simply understands situations faster than most, filing away details until they're precisely needed. When Grace, her 3-year-old daughter, was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma at age 2, Claire responded with that same quiet resolve. She didn't crumble. She organized. She learned everything. She found the best specialists, absorbed every detail about treatment options, and was at that hospital every single day, for over a year. Grace was 3 when she passed, on June 9th. I remember because Claire called me that morning, her voice thin but steady, and I drove to the hospital without a second thought. Afterward, I sat in the parking lot for an hour, numb, with no idea what else to do with myself. Grace was one of the sweetest children I've ever known. Her love for strawberries eclipsed all other foods. She made up songs about everything, her shoes, the ceiling fan, whatever small object caught her eye. The nurses on her floor adored her. Claire had covered Grace's hospital room door with her vibrant drawings, and it was impossible to walk by without feeling that something precious was unfolding within those walls, something the wider world wasn't paying enough attention to. Claire's family, her parents, who lived in Phoenix, and her younger sister, Nicole, had offered only a loose presence during Grace's illness. Her parents visited twice in 6 months. Nicole, who lived just 40 minutes from Austin, came once. She stayed perhaps 20 minutes, leaving with a complaint about the hospital parking fees. Claire never mentioned any of it to me. Once, I gently broached the subject, and she simply said, "Everyone deals with this stuff differently," and changed the topic. That was Claire. She wouldn't allow herself to resent her family while Grace was her sole focus. She'd shelved it. I watched her shelve it, the quiet way she put things aside, knowing they'd be dealt with later. I'd heard enough about Nicole over the years to have a clear picture long before any of this. Claire was the family's steadfast anchor, the one who smoothed conflicts, kept the peace, and drove home from college whenever a crisis needed managing. Nicole, however, had a way of centering herself, announcing her own promotion at Claire's wedding reception, showing up late to Claire's nursing school graduation dinner only to talk about a job offer she was considering. Every significant moment in Claire's life, Nicole found a way to claim a piece of it. Claire had always absorbed it, a silent agreement she'd never consciously made but understood implicitly. The family's unspoken rule. The trouble began about 6 weeks before Grace died. Nicole called with big news. She bought a 4-bedroom house with a pool, the kind of place made for social media with the hashtag living my best life. She planned an elaborate housewarming party, caterers, a band, invitations sent to over 100 people. The date she'd chosen was June 15th. She expected the entire family to be there. Claire, her voice level, explained that Grace was in her end stages. The doctors had given an early to mid-June window. Claire might be planning a funeral that very weekend. Nicole's response, relayed to me almost word for word by Claire, was that life goes on. She couldn't put everything on hold indefinitely, the deposits were already paid. She even suggested Claire might need the distraction, mentioning the non-refundable tent rental. Claire simply hung up. Grace died just after sunrise on June 9th. Claire was holding her hand. Later, she told me Grace opened her eyes one last time, smiled, whispered, "I love you, Mommy," before the machines began their frantic screams and nurses rushed in. Everything after that was a blur. The funeral was set for June 15th, the earliest the funeral home could arrange a proper service. Claire called her parents that evening. Her mother's immediate response, after the initial condolences, was to note that June 15th was the same day as Nicole's housewarming. Claire waited. She told me she genuinely waited for her mother to say, "Obviously, we'll skip the party. We'll be there." That part never came. Instead, "Let me talk to your father and Nicole. We'll figure something out." What they figured out was to go to the party. Nicole called the night before the funeral. She reiterated that she couldn't change the date, too many guests, caterers locked in, tent rental non-refundable, rescheduling would cost thousands. She suggested Claire contact the funeral home, insisting that funerals were more flexible than people realized, citing a friend who'd waited 3 weeks for a service. Claire asked her directly, her voice dangerously quiet, "You want me to leave my daughter's body in refrigeration so you don't have to reschedule your party?" Nicole called her dramatic. Claire's father called the next morning, echoing the same points. Nicole had worked so hard for this house. Tickets were purchased. They couldn't be in 2 places at once. Grace wouldn't want everyone to put their lives on hold for her. He even brought up his golf tournaments, he and his mother's book club, as if these trivialities held any weight against burying their granddaughter. Claire told him not to come. Told him to enjoy the party. Then she hung up. I was there on June 15th. Julia, Claire's closest friend and the charge nurse in the pediatric ICU, was there. Grace's father, David, flew in from Seattle, which, credit where it's due, he did. A small handful of Claire's co-workers attended. Grace's preschool teacher cried through the entire service, making no attempt to compose herself. That was it. Maybe 15 people total, gathered in a cemetery on a warm June afternoon, standing around a casket that was incomprehensibly small, the kind of small that makes your chest ache in a way words can't capture. Claire stood before that tiny white casket and delivered the eulogy she'd written at 3 a.m., her hands shaking so violently the paper audibly rattled. She spoke of Grace's laugh, her strawberry obsession, her made-up songs, the way she held up objects, a rock, a spoon, her own sock, and described them as if giving a grand presentation. She spoke of Grace's bravery through treatments that would break most adults. She didn't mention her family. Not once. She didn't have to. That evening, Claire went home and pulled up Nicole's social media. The housewarming photos were everywhere already. String lights over the pool. Tables laden with food. People laughing and dancing on the lawn. Claire's parents were in multiple shots. Her dad with his arm around Nicole, both grinning broadly. Her mom and Nicole in a close hug, teary-eyed with happiness. One caption read, "So grateful to have my amazing mom here for the biggest day of my life. Nothing is better than family." Her dad had commented beneath it, "So proud of my successful daughter. You've earned every bit of this happiness." That post was timestamped 2 p.m. Right when Claire had been standing at Grace's graveside. She closed the laptop before she could do something she'd regret. Then she sat on the floor of Grace's bedroom for a long time, an hour, maybe 3, she told me she genuinely had no idea. Surrounded by the toys, the drawings, the little strawberry-themed stuffed animal Grace had slept with every night in the hospital. A half-eaten pack of strawberry crackers still sat on the nightstand, untouched since Grace last ate them. Claire didn't cry that night. She said she'd gone past crying, somewhere around the 4th hour of sitting there. She just got quiet. And she made a decision. Now, pause here, because this is me, her friend, talking, not Claire. Nicole knew Grace was dying. She visited once in 6 months and left early over a parking fee. Then she told her grieving sister that a funeral was more flexible than you think. That's not mere obliviousness. That's Princess Housewarming deciding her pool party and granite countertops outranked a 3-year-old in a white casket. And the parents, who couldn't manage more than 2 visits while their granddaughter was dying, chose the catering. Just so we're all clear on exactly who these people are before the next part of the story. Claire blocked all 3 of them. She didn't respond to anyone for over a week. Her mother eventually got through on a different line. The conversation went exactly as you'd expect. Her mother called it a disagreement about scheduling. She claimed Nicole felt overshadowed, that Claire had always had a flair for drama, even as a kid, always making things into a bigger deal than they needed to be. She insisted the family needed to heal together. Claire simply said, "Don't call this number again." Then she blocked that, too. What she did next, I pieced together over the following weeks. She'd call me, or we'd grab coffee, and she'd fill me in, her voice quieter than before, but not in a broken way. More like someone who'd made a decision and was methodically executing it. I remember seeing a legal pad with extensive writing on it when we met at her place once. She closed it when I sat down, never mentioning it. You see, Nicole wasn't just a successful pharmaceutical sales rep, she was her company's top performer for 3 years running, pulling in bonuses that made Claire's nursing salary look like a rounding error. She drove a luxury car, wore designer clothes, maintained an aggressive public image, and had just bought an $800,000 house. All of it, it turned out, was built on fraud. Months earlier, during one of Grace's hospital stays, sometime around February or January, Claire could never pinpoint the exact stay, she'd overheard 2 doctors in the hallway. They were discussing a pharmaceutical sales rep who had been pressuring them to prescribe higher doses of a pain medication than clinical guidelines recommended. They mentioned the rep by name, Nicole. Claire had filed it away, a quiet detail she couldn't address while her child was dying. Her sister was aggressive in sales, sure, but criminal? Claire had given her the benefit of the doubt. After the funeral, she was done giving anyone anything. She spent the next 3 weeks quietly pulling at threads. No confrontations, nothing that would raise a flag. She had years of relationships within the healthcare system, and she knew how to ask questions in a way that seemed innocuous. She called people she trusted, doctors she'd worked alongside, administrators she'd built rapport with over years of shifts, people who understood the system as intimately as she did. She framed everything as casual curiosity, professional concern, routine follow-up. Nobody thought twice. What she found was worse than she'd expected. Nicole had been offering kickbacks to doctors disguised as consulting fees and speaking honorariums. She'd been falsifying prescription data to hit her sales quotas. Most damningly, she'd been pushing off-label use of a pain medication with serious documented cardiac side effects, a practice Claire could tie to at least 2 patient deaths through hospital records. The thing that truly stunned Claire, she told me, was Nicole's sheer stupidity in documenting it all. She complained about stupid rules and emails from her personal account, joked about doctors being easy. Money in texts. The kind of trail you'd think anyone would know not to leave. And then, there was the recorded phone call, Nicole pushing a physician to prescribe double the recommended dose to a patient already flagged with cardiac concerns. That one was the worst. That's what made everything that followed feel, at least to me, less like revenge and more like something that simply had to happen. Again, this is me. Claire, in the weeks after burying her daughter, quietly constructed a federal case against her sister. While grieving, while still working her shifts at the clinic. Most people in that position are barely functional, barely moving through the day. Claire was cross-referencing medical records and documenting kickback schemes. That's not raw emotion. That's someone with ice water in their veins, who finally had a reason to go looking. Princess Housewarming had handed the one person who knew the healthcare system inside out the exact motivation she needed. Whatever was coming next, Nicole herself had set in motion. Claire compiled everything into a detailed report and reached out to Trevor, a journalist who'd covered pharmaceutical fraud for years. They'd met briefly a couple of years back when he was doing a healthcare costs piece and had interviewed people at her clinic. She reached out. They met at a coffee shop downtown one Wednesday morning. She ate a plain bagel, a random detail she mentioned to me later, as if it had stuck with her for some reason. She laid everything out. Trevor went through the documents slowly. He called it substantial. He asked how she'd gotten all of it. She said, "I'm a nurse. I pay attention." He asked if she understood that this would likely mean criminal charges, that it would probably end her sister's career entirely. Claire told him what Nicole had called Grace's funeral, a minor event she could work around if necessary. Those exact words. Trevor said he'd verify everything independently and run the story if it checked out. Said it might take a few weeks. That was all she asked. 2.5 weeks later, he called. He'd confirmed everything. The pharmaceutical board had been notified and already opened an investigation. Federal prosecutors were looking at the case. He told her the story was publishing tomorrow. Her sister was about to have a very bad day. Claire drove to the cemetery after she hung up. Sat by Grace's headstone for a while. Told her the first domino was down. The article published on a Thursday morning. Front page on the Austin Chronicle online edition, top pharmaceutical sales rep accused of fraud, kickbacks, and endangering patients. Nicole's name was right there in the first paragraph. Her photo, pulled from her own social media profiles, the very same ones she'd used to post party pictures, ran alongside it. By noon, Nicole had deleted every account. By afternoon, news vans were parked in front of the housewarming house. By evening, her company had issued a statement announcing her immediate termination and full cooperation with all ongoing investigations. One of the fastest corporate separations I've ever heard of. Honestly, take a breath. Claire went from standing at her daughter's grave to watching news vans park outside her sister's dream house in under 6 weeks. The fraud was real. Trevor independently verified every piece of it. The patient harm was real. The victims existed long before Claire made a single call. She didn't invent anything. But the timing, the precision, pulling it all together in the middle of the worst grief most people ever experience, that wasn't luck or coincidence. That was someone who decided to be 3 moves ahead of everyone who assumed she'd just absorb it. Nicole threw a housewarming party. Claire threw a federal investigation back. But Claire wasn't done. Her parents had spent a lifetime enabling Nicole, and Claire felt they hadn't escaped what they'd done either. Her father, a retired accountant, was proud of managing his own investment portfolio, proud of the returns he generated. He used the same password for everything. She'd watched him log into accounts over the years. It was always the same combination, never changed. Claire wasn't going to steal from him. She wasn't going to do anything criminal. But she could create a significant amount of chaos in his financial life without touching a cent of his money. She set up a few email addresses that looked like they could be from legitimate financial institutions. She started sending him urgent-looking correspondences, suspicious activity on his accounts, required documentation for investments that didn't exist, security updates needed immediately. She knew her father. He'd panic. He'd call his brokerage at odd hours, demanding answers to problems that weren't actually there. He'd move money around, freeze accounts, make impulsive decisions. He'd create the chaos himself. Within a week, he was calling Nicole in a full meltdown. Nicole even posted about it on social media. "My dad thinks his accounts are compromised." Spent 2 hours on the phone with him. Why are old people so bad with technology? That post stayed up for 3 days before everything else came crashing down and she deleted all her accounts. A month after the article ran, federal prosecutors filed formal charges. Healthcare fraud, kickbacks, conspiracy to defraud. Each count carrying real prison time. Nicole tried to reach Claire every way she could think of, showing up at her apartment, calling from unknown numbers, getting people to pass messages. Claire had the locks changed and put up a camera. When Nicole appeared on her doorstep one evening, crying, Claire watched her on the camera feed from inside and didn't move toward the door. Nicole sobbed into the intercom that this was too much, that one bad decision shouldn't cost her everything, that Claire was destroying her. Claire pressed the intercom button and said one thing: "You called Grace's funeral a minor event." Then she let go of the button. Her parents reached her through the clinic, calling during working hours and telling the receptionist it was a family emergency. Claire took the call in the break room, her back against the wall, watching the door. Her mother opened with, "What you did to your sister is unforgivable." She claimed it was all over a party, that Claire was being vindictive, that Nicole had feelings too, and had felt overshadowed by the funeral timing. Her father got on the line and said Nicole had worked hard for everything she had, built herself up from nothing, and the family owed it to her to be there. Claire said she was done and hung up. But she had one more move. She contacted several news outlets with a follow-up angle on the story. She sent them photos from the housewarming, her parents laughing arm in arm with Nicole, celebrating big. She gave them the timestamps on every photo. She gave them the date of Grace's funeral. The follow-up articles were brutal. Family celebrated house built on fraud while grandchild was being buried. The story spread far past Austin. Her parents' retirement community received complaints from neighbors. The public was not gentle with their opinions. Strangers found their contact information. Her father had to stop answering the phone. Wait. I know some of you are already typing she went too far in the comments. And look, I wrestled with that, too. But here's what I keep landing on. These are people who visited their dying granddaughter twice in 6 months. Who received a funeral date and called it inconvenient. Who let Nicole describe the whole situation as a minor scheduling conflict and said nothing. They made every choice with full information in front of them. Claire just made sure the rest of the world got to see the same information they'd been sitting on. That's not cruelty. That's a receipt for choices they already made. Nicole took a plea deal. 5 years in federal prison, restitution to the victims, a permanent ban from working in pharmaceuticals or healthcare of any kind. The sentencing hearing was public. Claire went and sat in the back of the courtroom. She didn't tell me she was going until after. She said she needed to see it close out in person. Needed to watch the door close on it for real. Nicole saw her across the room the moment she walked in. Before the judge issued the sentence, Nicole was given a chance to speak. The designer clothes were long gone. Plain gray suit, hair pulled back simple, no jewelry. She looked smaller than Claire had expected. She said she took responsibility for her actions. Said she'd made terrible choices, hurt people, violated the trust of patients and physicians, and deserved to be punished. Then she looked directly at Claire and told the court that her own sister had orchestrated her downfall. Not out of concern for patient safety, she said, not out of any real moral principle. Out of personal revenge over a family disagreement. She said Claire had used the legal system as a weapon. The prosecutor objected. The judge sustained it, but Nicole had said the part she wanted to say. The judge sentenced her to the agreed 5 years. As she was let out, Nicole looked back one last time. Claire held her gaze, face completely still, until Nicole turned away first. Her parents made one final attempt after that. They drove from Oklahoma, showed up at the clinic lobby, telling security it was a family emergency. Claire came down. She said when she walked out of the elevator and saw them standing there, her first thought was just how much smaller they looked than she remembered. Her father had lost weight, his face gray, looking about 10 years older than the last time she'd seen him. Her mother's hands were shaking badly, and she'd aged in the way people do when the stress has been going on for a long time, not just weeks. They'd sold their retirement condo at a loss to cover Nicole's legal fees, declared bankruptcy. They were moving to a smaller place near a relative in Oklahoma. Claire said she stood about 6 feet away from them and didn't move any closer. Her dad said they just wanted to know if there was a path forward. If they were still a family somewhere underneath all of this. Claire looked at both of them for a long moment. Then she said, "There's no family here. You ended it when you chose a party over a funeral. When you made me bury my daughter alone." Her mother said they'd lost everything. Their savings, their home, their daughter in prison, their reputation gone. Wasn't that enough? Hadn't they been punished enough? Claire said, I lost my daughter, my 3-year-old, who loved strawberries and made up songs about everything she saw. She died asking me if we could go to the park when she felt better. I lost everything that actually mattered. You couldn't even show up for the funeral. She walked away. Security escorted her parents out. She never saw them again. About 2 months after that, she got a call from her Aunt Lydia, her father's sister, someone she hadn't spoken to in over a year. Her father had suffered a serious heart attack. He was in intensive care. Lydia said her mother was afraid to contact Claire directly and had asked her to pass the message along. She said he might not make it. She asked if Claire wanted to come. Claire said no. Didn't pause, didn't explain, just no. Lydia pushed back gently. Said she'd heard about the funeral, about everything, that what her parents had done was wrong, that she understood. But that he was dying, and didn't Claire want to say goodbye? Claire said, he said goodbye to me when he chose a party over his granddaughter's funeral. There was nothing left to say. Her father didn't die. He recovered enough to leave the hospital eventually, though his health remained fragile. Claire found out through a mutual acquaintance, not through family contact. She said she felt nothing when she heard it. Not relief, not regret, just nothing. Final update. About 6 months after Nicole went in, Claire received a letter from her, forwarded through the prison, already screened by the time it arrived. She almost didn't open it. She told me she held it over the trash can for a good 30 seconds before curiosity won. The handwriting was messy, not like Nicole's usual perfect script. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness. Said she probably didn't deserve it and knew that. But she said Claire had gone beyond what was just, that she'd orchestrated a complete destruction, ruined their parents financially, turned the entire world against them, used legitimate crimes as the vehicle for something personal. She said she hoped the pain had filled the hole Grace left. She said she didn't think it would, that she thought Claire would always be empty no matter what she did. She also said she had loved Grace, that she'd been a terrible aunt. She knew it, but that she'd loved her. That Grace would be sad to see what Claire had become. Claire read the letter twice. Then she burned it in her kitchen sink and washed the ashes down the drain. She had cease and desist letters sent to all 3 of them through a lawyer not long after. No contact, through any means, direct or through intermediaries, for any reason whatsoever. Violation would result in immediate legal action. That was the final door, closed and locked. What she did next is the part one think about the most, honestly. She started volunteering with a pediatric cancer support organization, working with families in the middle of what she had been in the middle of. Helping parents decipher medical jargon, navigate impossible hospital systems, find resources they didn't know existed. It was hard work for her. Every kid she met was a reminder of Grace. Every desperate parent she sat with reflected something she recognized from her own worst months. There were days she'd come home from a volunteer shift and call me, and we'd just sit on the phone for a while without saying much. But she didn't stop going. She told me once that it was the first thing that felt like it meant something real after everything else. Not healing, she said, she was careful not to call it that. Just meaningful in a way that the revenge never actually was. Even when the revenge was working exactly as planned. I watched her sit with a young mother one evening, perhaps 25, her son in end-stage leukemia. The woman asked her how you survive watching your child die. Claire said, you just do it one moment at a time. You're there. You hold his hand. You tell him you love him. You make every second count. The woman asked, what comes after? How do you survive it? Claire was quiet for a second. Then she said, you survive by choosing to. Every day you wake up and choose to keep going. Some days that's genuinely all you can do. Other days you can do more. But it starts with the choice. She still has Grace's drawings on her refrigerator. All of them. The same ones. Nicole served 3 years before parole. Claire found out through a news alert she'd set up. She didn't contact her. Didn't attend the release. As far as she's concerned, Nicole is a stranger, connected by DNA and by a history she's done carrying. Her parents are still out in Oklahoma somewhere. Her father's health remained fragile after his heart issues. Claire doesn't ask for updates anymore. None of it is her business now. She visits Grace's grave every June 9th. Always brings strawberries. She told me that on the 2nd anniversary, she sat out there for almost 3 hours, talking out loud to the headstone, telling Grace about everything that had happened, what she'd done, what it cost, what it felt like. She said she told her she was sorry if she'd become someone Grace would have been sad to see, but that she wasn't sure she'd had a better choice available, that she'd needed something to hold on to, and making them understand had been the only thing she could hold on to for a long time. She told me once, maybe 2 years after everything settled, that she doesn't regret it, that they deserved exactly what happened. But, she said, and there was a but. She said the revenge didn't fill anything. It gave her something to focus on when the grief would have swallowed her whole. It was a direction when she had nothing else. But once it was done, the grief was still there, just different, quieter, a different shape than before, not gone. I think about those party photo timestamps more than I probably should. 2 p.m., June 15th, nothing is better than family. I don't know what it says about me that I still can't look at that caption without feeling something shift in my chest, but I know exactly what it says about them. What Claire did wasn't crazy. It wasn't vindictive. Not really. It was the only language they'd ever shown any sign of understanding. Her sister built an $800,000 house on fraud that got real people killed. Her parents watched their granddaughter die from a distance, then posted, "Nothing is better than family," next to a pool. They expected forgiveness. They got consequences. And if you've ever been the person in your family that everyone assumes will just absorb it and move on, you already know exactly why she didn't. Could the price of exposing a profound injustice ever truly balance the profound emptiness of what was lost?